Hello, beautiful love goddesses. Kata Melvin here with a new podcast recording, and I am so excited about today's subject. I think a lot of women and couples struggle with the fact that there is no desire in the relationship. Um, the sex drive is low, and a lot of us complain that we like have sex once a month. And actually, I can say I've been there myself, and I now want to talk on that and really kind of give you a little bit of um, theoretic knowledge as to why this happens and give you some ideas on what you can do to make things a little different. But yet again, there is a theory part of everything, and then there is an implementation. And it's not that we don't know what we need to be doing, we struggle with the implementation part. We know all the things we need to be doing, but we're still not doing that, whether it's in sex life, whether it's in our like daily life and business and work and family. So like it's just a normal human thing that I myself guilty of. You know, I'm just the same way. I'm just like you. There are certain areas of my life where I get to procrastinate, and yet again, I'm myself working on so many things, so many things. Anyway, let's talk about the fantasy. What is fantasy and why is it important? And why is it important not only in sex life, but also in life? So, ever since I was a teenager, well, fuck it, a kid, right? We all dream. We all dream. And I was huge on daydreaming. Like at school, I would sit and not even pay attention to what the teacher is saying, right? I would create these fantasy plots, whether they involve something just for myself, for my life, they're not necessarily sexually charged, or in my older years when I became a teenager, I would definitely dream more in terms of a relationship and love and the connection with another person in a sexual way, right? And as I was growing older, have I stopped dreaming? No. Have my dreams changed? No. But what I do see happens a lot with so many of us, we get stuck in this idea that we have to adult. We need to be responsible adults and take care of the real problems and not waste our time daydreaming. And we need to be working and doing something productive, and there's no time to be wasting, and you know, we got bills to pay, right? So my entire philosophy about adulting itself is first of all, I'm not supporting this idea in the first place. In fact, I had to unlearn so many things that I've learned from society. I've taken up on. Nobody sat me down and said, "Hey, Katya, this is not how things work." You know, like I took those messages from the society. Nobody specifically told me. I took that up subconsciously, and we all absorb it. The society has this power to influence us on this subconscious level without actually talking about this. And then if you add talking on top of it, like it's so powerful. So we all get influenced by that. But there is a place and time where you sit down and you unlearn things in order for you to move forward and progress in life. So when I had to sit down and really face the subject of adulting, I've realized that we are not even, we came here to this earth to have fun and really live life to the fullest, and create with our thoughts and our dreams. Because without having our thoughts and dreams, we are not able to create in the first place, right? However, this whole idea that you have to work hard and you have to pay the bills and you get stuck in that, and that's what you think about all the time, and that's, you are creating that in your own life. Versus if you went back to the time of you being a child and you had these big dreams and they were all coming true. Like, you want that, I wanted that doll, I got that doll. I wanted this playset, I got that playset. I wanted a bike, I got a bike, right? Like, things were happening for me. It's not like I didn't have to work for it as a child. So what, who said that as an adult you have to physically create? Like, we used to create things with our thoughts and things just happen for us. And now, anyway, I love to get carried away. Let's bring it back towards the fantasy and desire. So I think by now you understand that fantasies is happening when we are desiring this beautiful vision of a new life that's available for us. A lot of us get stuck in this place of um oh, like, my dreams are too big, or like, that will never happen for us, or that will happen for her but not for me, right? And so we convinced ourselves to stop dreaming because we got bills to pay, right? We convinced ourselves to stop dreaming, and we lose that ability to create with our thoughts like we used to when we were children. And I had to unlearn that whole philosophy of hustling, adulting, and all of that, so I could yet again tap into my creative power and allow myself to daydream again. In that allowing, my life started changing, because it's not on me to change my life. It's my thoughts that changing everything around me, and the grid just fills in. More on that when we talk about law of attraction. I'm all about that. I'm all about manifesting. That's the only way. It's the only way. If you think you have to do things, the universe is laughing at you right now. You have to do nothing. The only thing you can do is be very clear on what you want. Not, you can't control anything. You can't control anything. Like, the only thing you can control is your thoughts in this particular moment. Back to daydreaming. So when we daydream, we fantasize about this beautiful life. In sex, that translates into creating these plots and scenarios that are really that gives you butterflies, that are so pleasurable that you want to play them out in your real life. And the reality of that is, specifically about the sexual fantasies, is it's not necessarily gonna feel the same, right? One thing, when you're creating these plots and scenarios, and when you're trying to play them out in your real life, they're not as juicy, and there is the real life element of it comes into play. And it's just not the same. It sounds really awesome, and I think I keep repeating this example over and over, regarding the rape fantasy, right? Lots of women want to be abducted and have these fantasies of being raped, but when you play that out, it's not necessarily the most enjoyable thing to be tucked in a trunk, and, like, it's not going to be enjoyable, right? And so on and so forth. But the fantasies are there for the purpose of inspiring you on and maintaining that level of sexual tension within your own mind between the two of you, right? Right. How does that connect with the desire? Let's dive into developing that connection. When you fantasize, that automatically implies that you don't have something, that you don't have something and you want to bring that something into your very own reality. When you bring it to your reality, it is fulfilled and the daydreaming and the fantasy dies, right? Because you have fulfilled that and you moving on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. That's how you grow everywhere, like in sex life and life. It's just a normal state of things, right? But when you fantasize, you imply that you don't have something. And the only thing you can desire is when you don't have something. When you don't have something. Why does desire die in relationship? And I probably should record the entire podcast related to this subject in particular because it is an important subject. And every single one of us struggle with that if we are in a long term relationship or in marriage, right? Why does desire go away? Well, desire is only there if you don't have it. If you don't have the thing, if you don't have the person, if you don't have the sex, like that's when desire is gonna be alive. When you are together, you imply that you have the person, you have sex, you have. So there is no room for desire to be even growing. And the only way to create that desire is to become separate again, right? And have that danger zone of maybe losing each other, or maybe a possibility of another person coming in, or there is that element of unsafety that is happening when you have that desire, simply because you don't have something and maybe you are afraid to lose that. And that spikes that intensity, that spikes that desire, that spikes that fantasy element in the relationship altogether. So, why are we in marriage are striving towards that intimacy? We call it intimacy. I want to know everything about you. And then we fall into the place where we really know everything about each other and we assume that there is nothing else that we can learn about that person. And the desire goes away because there is no novelty in the relationship. There's nowhere else to grow. There's nothing else to explore, and desire goes away. And that is one of the biggest reasons why infidelity happens, why one of the couple, someone in the couple starts looking outside of marriage because there is an ocean of other possibilities and people to explore, right? They bring that novelty element into the relationship altogether, therefore creating that desire within the couple itself, right? And this is a very dangerous zone to navigate. You really need to be, and honesty is huge here. Honesty between the couple is huge here. You have to be 100% transparent, not even 99%, 100% transparent. Otherwise, you will put your relationship into the danger zone and do something that you were not supposed to be doing, right? So we're not talking about that here today. We're talking about just the theory of why why the element of that spark and passion and desire goes away in a relationship in the first place. And that happens because there is no novelty that is being created in the sense that it would fulfill. Then there is no novelty, there's no desire, no, there is actually fantasy, but fantasy goes into a different side of things. Fantasy goes into what happens if, I like this other person, what happens there, right? So it is my core belief that it is so totally okay to be separate and liking, seeing, and even loving other people, even though you are still within the relationship. You may not agree with me, that's totally fine. But that just little bit of separateness as you as a separate person and freedom to make that decision creates that spark back, right? And it actually translates it back into your relationship with the original person altogether. So that is how I want for you to actually look at that. So whether it's a fantasy realm, like totally okay to fantasize about someone else, right, within the relationship, because it's gonna really translate into having that spark within the original marital relationship as well. So, my point today, ladies, is that fantasy is very, very normal. You should not adult and talk yourself out if you are going, if you are starting to get overwhelmed. And I so totally get it. I so totally understand. There is like life, and dishes and like cook dinners and like whatnot. Especially like we are a community of women mothers, right? And a lot of us have our own businesses, and like there is so much that's on our plate. But if you don't replenish yourself in that sense, right? And we are talking specifically right now within the sexual reality here. If you are living, and that is why in the Love Goddess program I'm teaching you to, yes, there's this real world where we all live, and yes, there's still like we have to earn the money and we have to pay the bills and we have to like take kids to school, right? But then there is that fantasy world that you should be creating. And that is where you will need to open up that space for the fantasy element to fill in. Where your real world, in the real world, you only give, right? You do, you act, and you live in this masculine, I wouldn't say identity, but like in this masculine way. We all have, like women, men, we all have both qualities in us, feminine and masculine. And sometimes a woman would have more of a masculine quality than a man, right? And vice versa. So it depends how much of that flow we allow, or how much are we really like, what perspective are we living from? Right? A lot of women are go, 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 like military style, like let's do things, let's get shit done, right? And a lot of men are very soft and a little bit more kind of like in the flow and in touch with their own feelings. And so there's so many variations. I'm not saying there's right or wrong, totally okay to be embracing what you need in that particular moment or in that particular aspect. And if feminine energy is more, that is what you need right now, that's great. If masculine energy keeps you going, that's great. But let's take it, let's put it all in the, this is our real world and this is the fantasy world. And the fantasy world is where you are allowing yourself to create the fantasy and fill that fantasy, um, fill that fantasy world with your own fantasy, meaning that your real world is go, 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 do, and you're giving. Masculine means giving, right? Like living from a masculine perspective means giving to someone, doing something, and it's taking energy from you. When you are giving, you can't sustain unless you refill that cup, refill that energy. And if you are giving, but not receiving, you're going to burn out. You're going to crash and burn, and you're going to be depressed, and you're going to get stuck in bed, in a very dark space for a very long time. And That's not a nice perspective of life, right? Nobody wants that. But you have to be in balance and in the flow, right? So if you are giving, giving, giving in the masculine world, but this is your receiving world, your fantasies, your receiving world, where you replenish yourself, where you create these plots and scenarios, and you are allowing yourself to receive, and you are allowing yourself to replenish. And this could be the life itself, right? This could be this area where you just, allow yourself to be selfish and read a book instead of go take care of your kids and put them to bed, right? Like where you allow yourself to take a bath or dance or go out with girlfriends and not feel guilty about it, right? Or this could be specifically pertaining to your sexual life, where you receive that fantasy and you replenish by, indulging in pleasure once in a while. And in fact, it should be close to, it should be at least once a week, right? When you create, like when you indulge in that pleasure, at least to keep you going. Like, we all have weekends. Why can't we have one night of pleasure? But we get so stuck in that mentality, and the desire is lacking, and desire is lacking, and the spark and connection in couple is lacking. That's why sex life is lacking, right? How do you create that spark? You have this other world that you are charging up, and you're refilling it with the fantasy. Last night, I started listening to this erotic fantasy story, and guilty to admit, I fell asleep in the beginning stages of that story. So I didn't actually get to listen to what happened in the end. But just by even listening to something like that, you create that element of sexual charge, and it gets your brain spinning, it gets your fantasy going. You start following the author, and you start creating those. You start seeing it for yourself, and that refills that sexual charge within your fantasy world that you can then take and nourish and cherish, and actually use that energy that you've created within that from just listening to the erotic bedtime story, which there's so many of them available. I particularly listened to the one on Audible, but there are podcasts with that, there are mini books with that. There's just so many. So pick whatever you like, and like if you, again, and everyone's king's different too. Like maybe something else turns you on more than the regular stuff that turns other people on, right? So some people into BDSM. We all have different kinks. So like, and there is literature literally for every aspect of that, right? So whatever your thing is, refill that, recharge that energy, create that fantasy. If you're struggling, it really is about imagination. Like how vivid is your imagination? A lot of people live without that imagination aspect, right? We'll lose that ability to dream and create, and sometimes we need help. And if you can't create it for yourself, which I'm very skilled, that's why I almost don't even read those kind of books anymore, because but what it does for you, it gives you this idea or inspiration of where to turn your mind to, right? And you spin off of that, and this is your starting point, and you go and have fun, right? And you use that charge, that energetic charge that you created, and you project it onto your partner. And that is one way of resparking that desire, right? So, my loves, let's see. Do we have any comments? We are recording live and seeing if we have any comments. Does not look like we have any questions or comments. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I would love for you to share your thoughts, your opinions, what has worked for you as far as resparking your fantasies, what has worked for you resparking your desires in relationship. And you can send those out to me either in our private Facebook group or in my DMs on the Instagram. And my handle is Katya Melvin, Ktya Melvin, Melvin. And I can't wait to hear and see what you have to say. Thank you, my beautiful love, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.